How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about Dracula from 1979, directed by John Badham and starring Frank Langella as Dracula and Laurence Olivier as Dr. Van Helsing. Now, when people talk about Universal reboots and you talk about Dracula, a lot of people mention Dracula Untold, and I feel that when people think of Universal monster reboots, they tend to think of the period from the Brendan Fraser Mummy to the Tom Cruise Mummy. This falls in that period after the Creature from the Black Lagoon movies, but before the first Fraser Mummy, where I feel it's a lot less easy to know, what all movies are there. I know about this one and Frankenstein, the True Story, as well as the American Werewolf in London movies, but I feel like overall this period is less talked about than the old period and the new period, and to be honest, I didn't even know that this version of Dracula was a Universal movie till quite recently, and then of course I rushed out and picked it up. I'm like, I need it for my collection. And if you guys know any other movies in this time period that are Universal produced classic monster movies, I'd love to hear about them. But anyway, so this movie I hadn't heard much about. It kind of was a lost Dracula film in Universal's catalog. Well, not lost as in really lost, but one that people didn't talk about as much, which is kind of a disappointment, because this one's actually pretty good. It starts off on the ship. They skip the whole typical Transylvania scene, and it starts off Dracula's already on the ship, so none of that Harker going down their stuff. And there's a huge storm, and they try to reduce the weight of the ship, so they start throwing some of the boxes off, and unfortunately for the people on the boat, they try to throw the box with Dracula's coffin overboard, so he springs out of the coffin and kills everyone on the ship, and you get the ghost ship floating in to England, all empty, with Dracula being the only survivor. This was interestingly kind of mirrored in the Eddie Murphy movie Vampire in Brooklyn. They did a very similar thing. So Dracula, surviving the boat, gets accepted into the English society, and there Donald Pleasence actually plays Dr. Jack Seward. So you get Donald Pleasence, who everyone knows from Halloween as Dr. Loomis, and it was just so great to see Loomis there. I'm like, hey, it's Loomis, and he's also a doctor, and really just great to see him in this movie. You also get, in addition to eliminating the prologue, another one of this movie's big changes is Mina in this movie is actually Mina Van Helsing, the doctor of Van Helsing. So when Van Helsing comes into the picture later in this movie, he actually has a much more personal reason to be there, and when Van Helsing shows up, he's much more like a concerned father who, his daughter was placed in this horrible situation, and it's a different approach than, you see Van Helsing as the concerned citizen, or Van Helsing as the well-organized monster hunter, or the man of science that has to face the supernatural. We've seen lots of different versions of him, but him taking on Dracula for a personal reason because of his daughter is a different take on the character we hadn't seen before, and he's not super familiar with everything, but because of the personal ties, he's willing to go in and figure out what he needs to do, and I thought that was an interesting take on the character. The whole movie, it's shot in what I feel is like a faux black and white. It's in color, but everything's kind of desaturated, and it's a nice nod to the old black and white Universal films without actually being in black and white. And it's got this really cool, smooth, gothic feel. You got Dracula's castle, which is really nice and well made up. It's this big, elaborate set. And there's also a tunnel sequence in this film that's really good. And overall, a really good, well-made film. The faux black and white, tying back to the original Universal one. There's also a few lines from the original. The Children of the Night line is repeated in this movie, as well as Van Helsing, you are quite wise for someone who has not yet lived even a single life. And those are some really nice nods to it. It does have, kind of like how Hammer would introduce into the classic monsters, a little more violence. This is not quite as dark as the Hammer ones would be, but it's like if you took just a little bit of Hammer's violence and put it into the old Universal movies. That's kind of the feel you get. And overall, this is a really good movie that I enjoyed sitting back and watching, a nice gothic tale. Overall, I definitely recommend this, and seriously, if you guys know any Universal produced classic monster movies in the post-Creature, pre-Brendan Fraser Mummy era, I'd love to know in the comments section, because I feel that this is less easily charted out. Anyway, I really like this, and I would definitely recommend this. And also, before I go, the channel's growing at a good rate, and I'd like to thank everyone who's liked and subscribed. You guys really help me out. I'm really appreciative. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys next time.